Okay, welcome everyone to another Get Legit webinar. This is Navigating Farm Transitions with a panel of speakers from the DCC, Nevada County, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Central Valley Water Board. Our panelists from each agency will share how to compliantly amend farming operations with confidence and peace of mind. Today is Thursday, January 15th, 2026. My name is Erin, and I am the Education and Communications Manager here at the Cannabis Alliance. I'd like to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is our hope that anyone interested in commercial cannabis here in Nevada County will take the time to tune into these webinars, educate themselves, and continue to be or become stewards of the environment and of our community. The Get Legit educational series provides the preparation necessary to assist in securing a local cultivation permit and state cultivation license. The series includes webinars, support groups, business skills trainings, and a mentor program. All webinars are online, free of charge, and open to the public. So what is the Alliance? The Alliance is a nonprofit trade association representing the local cannabis industry here in Nevada County. Our mission is to support public policy initiatives through representative advocacy and provide educational opportunities for business growth and success. There are many ways to get involved with the Alliance, and one of them is to become a member. The Nevada County Cannabis Alliance plays a vital role in shaping policies that strengthen the economic sustainability and success of our locally licensed cannabis industry. If you are a licensed cannabis business here in Nevada County that has benefited from cannabis policies that we've worked on, we would love for you to join our membership to ensure that we can continue serving our local cannabis community here in Nevada County. We appreciate your support so much. Some services that we provide to our members are consistent voice and representation locally and at the statewide level, year-round continuing education, and that includes, compliance and regulatory workshops, business training skills, cannabis farming best practice seminars, and more. We help you navigate the permit and ongoing compliance processes with the resources and support you need. We have a buddy program to pair permitted farmers with new farmers who want to learn more from experienced growers, and seasonal industry mixers and events for community and connection. Another way to get involved is to become a sponsor. If you are a local business looking to support the cannabis industry here in Nevada County, we would love for you to join us. We are so grateful for our current sponsors who believe in the work that we do, and we could not do this work without you, so thank you. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, you can email me at Erin, ERIN, at nccannabisalliance.org, and I will put all these links in the chat for everyone so you can visit the links that I'm mentioning here. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Nevada County Alliance or on Instagram at Nevada County Alliance. We have a bi-monthly newsletter you can subscribe to, and any additional questions you can email me again, and I'll put those in the chat. So we have a couple of upcoming Get Legit webinars on the books. The next one coming up is Local Policy Tools to Grow Your Business. This will be happening on Thursday, February 19th, 2026 from 3 to 4 p.m. Diana Gamzon will be leading this webinar. Over the past decade, the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance has advanced policies that support our local licensed cannabis industry. In this webinar, you will learn how to utilize these policies to strengthen, expand, and protect your business in a competitive market. I'll put the link to register in the chat. And our next one is actually part 3 of a series that we've been doing. It's Cannabis Farming Basics for the Home Grower. The part 3 is happening on March 5th. This will be drying, curing, and storing your harvest. And I'll put that link in the chat as well. Okay, I want to give a shout out to our allied industry business sponsors. We have Ag Natural, Cramner Engineering, Plan Air Landscape Architecture, Humboldt Seed Company, Mr. B's Green Trees, Gold Coast Botanicals, Elevation 2477. Thank you so much for your support, and we are so happy to have you on board. Okay, so let's get to the webinar. The format is that our speakers will give a presentation with a Q&A to follow. If you do have any questions, your participation is encouraged. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have that will make the webinar more useful for everyone. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website at nccannabisalliance.org/getlegit. And that's all that I have. Diana, do you have anything to add?
Thanks. Thank you all for being here. Thanks, Erin.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pass it along to everyone to begin the webinar. Our first speakers are going to be from the DCC, and this is Erin Wonder and Eva Olin. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
All right, I guess that's me. My name is Eva Olin. I'm an environmental scientist supervisor. I work at the Department of Cannabis Control in the licensing division. So I'm going to go over kind of like the process to make some changes to your cultivation license or to close down your business with us. So next slide, please. So yeah, first I'm going to go over the cultivation license changes. Next slide, please, again. So I think it was a little over a year ago, the DCC came out with these cultivation license changes available to license holders. So I'm just going to go over these. There is a lot of information on our website, and we do have a link to that information at the end of the PowerPoint. So there's 3 primary changes available for cultivation license holders. So cultivators can make a one-time change to the expiration date of their license. They can reduce the size or the mature canopy of a license, or they can place it in a limited operation status. Next slide, please. So first up, making a one-time change to an expiration date. So when you do this, you basically select a date that is on or up to 12 months from the date of the request. You need to pay the applicable license fee, which may be prorated. And there are examples of the fees and fee calculations available on our website, which you can take a look at. You make this change using the cultivation license system, and you either do it at the time of renewal or any time outside the renewal period. And once the license is up for the next renewal, the full license fee will be due. And if you wanted to reduce the size of a cultivation license, the requirements include reducing the canopy area. The reduced canopy area must be fully located within the canopy area of the original license. So the canopy can't be changing locations or making other adjustments to the canopy, just reducing the size. The lighting type must remain the same, and the license must remain at the reduced size for the duration of the license term. Next slide, please. To reduce the size of a license, again, you do it using the cultivation license system. You upload a premises diagram, a revised premises diagram, and you pay any applicable fees, which could be prorated. And you can either do this at the time of renewal or when you make a one-time change to your expiration date. And then at the next renewal, you can elect to retain the reduced size license. You can further reduce the size of a license to another smaller size, or you can restore it to the original size of the license. And then at that renewal, you would pay the license fee, based on what you're selecting to do there. Next slide. And lastly, you can place a cultivation license in limited operation status. So licensees are able to engage in certain activities with limited operation status license, so they can dry, cure, grade, trim, package, and sell cannabis that was harvested before the license was entered into limited operations. And you can maintain seeds and immature plants used for propagation to maintain genetics while the license is in limited operation status. Once you place the license in limited operation status, it remains there for the duration of the license term. And the request for limited operation status does come with a fee. It's a 20% of the original license fee. So you would pay that at the time you elect to place the license in limited operations. And next slide. So again, you do this through the cultivation license system online. And you either do it at the renewal period or when you make a one-time change to the expiration date. And again, yeah, you pay the applicable license fee and meet renewal requirements. And then at the next renewal, you would either renew it in limited operations or go back to regular operation status and pay the licensing fee at that time. Next slide. So now we'll get into terminating a DCC license. And I think Erin has the first slide here.
I will, yep. I'll take that over. So my name is Erin Wonder. I work in the compliance division at DCC. So I'm mostly going to be talking about what to do if you are going to terminate your license and how to sort of maintain compliance throughout that process. So first, to kind of define, or what is a license termination? What does that mean? That's just the term, sort of umbrella term that our regulations use to describe anything that puts a license into essentially inactivity. So kind of categories for that would be passively letting the license expire. You could proactively decide you want to surrender the license. In certain cases, if there are egregious compliance issues, the department may revoke a license, and those would all fall under the termination umbrella. So if you are allowing your license to expire, that inactivity date then is pretty common sense. It's the expiration date that has been there the whole time, essentially. And then when that expiration date hits, you will completely lose access to your track and trace account in Metric. So it won't just mean it's frozen, you can look at it but can't do anything. You won't even be able to see it. And that's relevant for a point I'll get to in a second about how to deal with your inventory. The when is or what is the license termination date kind of depends on which of those three categories. So again, if you're letting it passively expire, it's your expiration date. If you're surrendering the license, and Eva will talk on the next slide about what that process is with our licensing division, the surrender date is partially, it's dependent on how the licensing division is able to process your request, and then you'll know in advance this is the date that your license is going to go inactive, so you'll get some advance notice. If it's a revocation, that's the only instance where the licensee does not know in advance. That's the only time it's going to be a surprise. So if you're kind of looking at, I don't want to be licensed anymore, I'd like to let this go. What's the difference for you as the licensee between letting it expire or surrendering? It kind of just comes down to business operations decisions. Do you have anything to wrap up cultivation-wise or processing? Is your expiration date coming up soon? In which case, just let it go passively. Is your expiration date 11 months from now? Something to consider is that even if you aren't actively operating, even if you have no inventory and Metric, if your license is active, you still are expected and required to be compliant with the regulations, and the compliance division may come and inspect you at any of that time. So if you just want that off your plate, you don't want to have to worry about it, you don't want to be inspected because you know you're not using your license, then choosing to surrender is possibly the better option in that case. So just those are the kind of things to consider. And how would you prepare for this termination, whether you've decided to expire or surrender the license? The big thing is to proactively think ahead about what you're going to do with your remaining inventory. So if you have live plants, you need to give yourself time to harvest them and do any sort of processing or transferring of inventory off your license. If you're surrendering, again, this is probably something to start working on when you initially make your surrender request to the department. Start moving your inventory, start destroying things that you don't want to transfer. But the main thing is that have a plan in place to either destroy your inventory that you're not going to transfer out and update Metric, or have it transferred out via licensed distributor, and have that done before that termination date, because you have a very narrow window to make some transfers after the termination date, which I'll talk about in a couple slides, but it's logistically difficult and it requires paperwork, and it's just best if these things are taken care of before the termination date. So really kind of thinking ahead is the message I want to stress there. So I think now Eva will take the next slide.
Yeah, thank you. So to surrender your license, you submit a request to the DCC. So this needs to come from the DRP and from their registered email address, and they send an email to info@cannabis.ca.gov, and just basically request the surrender. So they should include the business name, the license number, and a clear statement that a surrender of the license is requested. And then once the DCC receives that, they review the request. And once the request is approved, they notify the DRP and identify the date the license will be surrendered. So the DCC will be providing that surrender date. And then, as Aaron mentioned, prior to the license surrender, you want to update and start dealing with your track and trace stuff. So you will know what that date is once the DCC approves your request to surrender. And yeah, next slide.
So I mentioned post termination date, there is a process in place to transfer inventory off of your site, but it's not ideal. And so what you can do in that case, even if you didn't get metric updated, it's always best don't leave inventory lingering on your site if you're not going to transfer it out quickly. Like I said, you'll lose access to metric. And so what then it looks like in metric is you had a bunch of inventory. Even if you destroy it after the fact, it functionally kind of looks like it disappeared. Like there's a bit of a dead end paper trail wise. And so it's in everyone's best interest to have this stuff done in metric before you lose access on the termination date. If you can't get those transfers out coordinated with a licensed distributor before your termination date, you have a 14-day window where the distributor, not you as the former licensee, but the distributor that you're working with, needs to make a request to the department by submitting that DCC Form 28, requesting authorization to procure that inventory. So that gets submitted. This is all on the department's website with instructions on where to submit it. The department reviews that, and then we work with the distributor to get that transferred. But again, it's 14 days. It's very narrow. And a lot of the times people kind of depend on this coming together quickly after the fact. And a lot of times it doesn't. So if this is something you're kind of looking at, again, I would strongly encourage people to make these transfers before they lose access to their license. And it will just save a lot of headaches for everyone. So next slide. So this is just a sort of simplified version of if you are having inventory transferred after authorization, where it can go. This is the same as where things can go pretty much when you are still an active licensee. So essentially, it's kind of indicating that you can't go straight from a licensed cultivator to a retail site because our regulations still require COA testing, having valid COAs, that kind of thing. So just a reminder here, I'm not going to necessarily read all the way through the flow chart, but if it still needs to be processed or manufactured, which if you're a cultivation license, that's most likely the case, it needs to go to a licensed processor or manufacturer and be transferred by a licensed distributor. If it needs packaging and labeling, it needs to go to a licensee that is authorized to conduct packaging and labeling, that sort of thing. But one note I want to make too, all of these sort of post licensure post-termination rules. These aren't just for cultivation licensees. These regulations apply to all licensees. So if you're someone who maybe has both a cultivation license and a distributor license, the same regulations apply here. And again, this is like a summary, but our regulations are very detailed about this kind of thing, which kind of takes me to the next slide, which is if you have questions later, if this is something you want to pursue, the best way to know what you need to do, what the next steps are, and what you can do to be, compliantly would be to contact our info at cannabis inbox, and they'll either refer you over to compliance and our track and trace support team or over to licensing to initiate, say, a surrender or that kind of thing. And then additionally, we have email announcements that go out to licensees, I believe every other week that you can sign up for, that they've got announcements, education and guidance that we give to licensees, any updates on regulations and that kind of thing. Super helpful information. So I would encourage any licensees to sign up. And then our website is listed there, and we have information about license changes, cultivation license changes that Eva discussed, and also in additional more in-depth information about managing that inventory after termination is in our regulatory section 15024.1, and our regs are also on the website. But as anyone who's been licensed knows, our regs are complicated, and don't worry if it doesn't make sense. Again, just always send your questions over to our inbox, our info at cannabis inbox, and someone will be happy to help. And then our social media is listed over there on the right. So Kristen, do we have any questions in the chat that should be
Hey,
addressed.
thank you. Thank you both. We do have a couple of questions. So there was a question that came in just asking for clarity about what happens when you're in that limited operation status and you want to come out of that status through during the cultivation year. Do you have to wait a full year? So I don't know, Eva, you want to take that one?
Yeah, all the cultivation license change options that I went through are in effect for the duration of the license term. So yeah, in general, that is 1 year. Maybe you could make a one-time adjustment if you change the expiration date on your license one time, but really it's for the year-long term of the license. Yeah, when you make that change.
And then there was is it possible to place your license into limited operation status instead of potentially surrendering altogether? And I think, right, you can do that at renewal as long as you have a valid license, or when you make a change to that expiration date. I don't know. Eva, do you have anything, or Erin, you want to add to that question?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
I would just add one thing, I suppose, is when considering the one-time renewal date change, I think that that's something to be really strategic with. So say if someone is an outdoor licensee, you're likely finished harvesting by the end of October. Think about, even if right now you're not thinking about surrendering your license, if in, 5 years something changes, you're probably going to have a similar calendar, in the sense of you'll know that by the end of the calendar year, you're probably done. And that's a good time to decide and be able to kind of scope out the industry, scope out your own, business situation. When do I want to be committing to a full year of licensure versus when do I want to commit to limited operations? So I think when you set that date is really a critical point to kind of look at your own business operations and know when is the time each year that you evaluate what you're going to be doing and how much you're committing to using your license. So even though if it locks you in for a year, combining the limited operations with that one-time renewal date change if you're doing it, intelligently, I think it really can works in your favor to not necessarily have to commit the full license fee each year. But if your renewal date is in June, that's not a great time. So, those are the kind of things to think about when you're setting that.
Right. So if your renewal date is in June, going into limited operations in June when you have a crop in the ground could be problematic because you can really only maintain the plant material that's already harvested while you're in that limited operations.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. So definitely plan ahead and think about all of the different, how that fits into your harvest cycle, and, your processing and your sales cycle. Okay. There are some questions about not being fully compliant, but I think that gets us into some kind of case scenario specific questions. And if you really have a question about how to use one of these programs when you're bumping up against a compliance issue, please email that directly to info@cannabis.ca.org so we can connect you to a compliance team member that might be better suited to work with you through that process. Okay, looks like we are out of questions, so I think we should hand it back to our organizers. Thank you so much.
A question here, Diana. My question is can you talk a little bit about change of ownership as it relates to modifications around the business license, around the DCC license, and some of the rules with people who may want to just change the ownership structure but still maintain the license?
From the
Sorry.
licensing side, did you want to go over that at all? I just from the compliance perspective is a little different.
Yeah, there are certain requirements on what is allowed under ownership and business changes. And I do think that information is available on our website. So some changes to ownership are allowed, but like if a business is being sold or bought and the business entity is changing and like everything's being changed or transferred or transitioned to a different business entity, then that does require a new application and a new license because our licenses are not transferable. And so the DCC does have a process for that. And if there's an existing license on site, that license would need to be surrendered by that DRP. So there is some planning that would need to go on, between the two like business entities and the DRP. Um, and so the process is a little similar, but a little bit different when businesses are being bought and sold. So if you are planning on doing this, you should email the info inbox with your request and get some information because inventory can be transferred, license might need to be surrendered, and then the new application needs to be approved. So there are a couple of different moving parts on that. So yeah, I think it's best to email us with what you want to do, and we can like help you and hopefully have a good working relationship with the DRP from the existing license to get that surrendered and get everything in place for you. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yes. And just the final question, what is the current time for just people who are getting new licenses? What's the DCC's time for expected time for average license approvals right now?
I would say between like 3 and 9 months, probably. Yeah, so still need to plan ahead a little bit, especially if people are cultivating outdoors or mixed light, need to follow, the growing season and want to grow by the summertime. They should get an application in like in the winter, like before the spring, so there's plenty of time. And usually, often we do see every year kind of like a new slug of applications coming in like in the springtime. So we do kind of get a little pulse and we get a little more busy with applications. So yeah, I would say plan to submit an application in the winter so you can be up and ready to go by planting and growing season.
Just
Thanks.
want to add one thing to the ownership change discussion from the compliance perspective is it's always better ownership changes about what's approved and what isn't approved by the department. It's complicated. And it's probably not something that we can even really adequately explain because it's very case dependent and situation dependent whether it's a compliant change or not. And so anyone who's kind of looking into this, like Eva said, it's always better to let the department know what you want to do and get that help ahead of time to know whether what you're doing is even going to get approved. A lot of times people will make ownership changes, submit them after the fact, which you have 14 days to do that, and you're not supposed to be implementing these changes until the department approves it, and only to find out that it's not an approved ownership change. So I think anytime you're doing something and it's not a very obviously compliant measure, it's always best to just run it by the department and get that advice first, rather than have to undo something later, because that can be a pain.
And really for any of these, I just starting at info at, right? So making that request, helping, just ask the questions, helping the department understand what it is you're hoping to do. If the info at team can't answer those questions because it's a license or application specific scenario, we're going to make sure that question gets to the right folks that can help you. So you can maintain your compliance and have hopefully a seamless transition.
Awesome. Thank you, Eva, Aaron, and Kristen for presenting and answering all those questions. Up next, I would like Sue Kaplan with Nevada County to present. And thank you so much for being here, Sue. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Let me just see if I can shift and share my screen with everyone. All right, let's see here. Is that working on your end? Can
Looks
everyone see
great.
it?
Looks
Okay,
great, Sue. Thank you.
terrific. Okay, so I'm Sue Kaplan with the Nevada County Cannabis Compliance, and talk to you a little bit today about winding down a farm or making changes to a farm. I can address that too. Basically, when we're looking at our process for assisting cultivators make changes, that part is pretty simple and pretty straightforward, especially compared to the DCC's very complicated process. So ours is going to be a lot more straightforward. However, there is some important decision making that needs to occur, and it can be a little more complex to decide what is it about your cannabis farm that you want to wind down. So before I go into our process, I wanted to just focus for a minute on what entitlements do you have with the county. And there are two that I'd like to cover. I hope everybody remembers our lingo. So you've got the ACP and the ADP. The ACP is the renewable license to operate. And that designation, if your site is compliant, you receive a certificate every year. And it's what funds our program and allows me to come out and meet everyone and do my inspections. And that is something that can be shuttered, and I'll go into that process. But just as important, if not more important, every cannabis operator also holds an ADP, an administrative development permit. That is your land use entitlement. And that, you've worked very hard to achieve and spent a lot of time and money and resources on. And that lasts forever as long as you're meeting your conditions of approval in the letter. And so the decision point is going to be, which of these things am I closing? Am I closing just for now, temporary, or am I closing forever? So keep that in mind as we go through this process. At the county, if someone is taking a temporary pause or reducing the size of their canopy, we have a fallow state declaration. And there's a form that exists in our library on our website. If you navigate your way to the county's website and go under cannabis compliance, this form sits out there. And in general, we would make the recommendation that if a farm is going through a transition, potentially closing permanently, that they only do the fallow process, because it would preserve their right to reopen in the future. It would preserve the administrative development permit. So our first step when someone calls is to talk through the fallowing process. And when this form is filled out and submitted, the form circulates to all the different county departments and basically makes sure that the pause on operations is known about for our tax collector, our ag group, our environmental health, so that inappropriate invoices aren't generated. Could save from having a tax bill generated. So it puts a pause on the ACP. And, our hope is that the climate in the future might change and the operator might wish to resume. And to resume, you would simply contact our department and we would go through your file and make sure we have everything we need and that the site is compliant. And we would help facilitate that process of restarting, probably with an ACP inspection to get the site going again. There is a cost to declare fallow, and we've made some changes this year in our process. We hadn't had too many sites fallowing, so the initial idea by the county was that this would be an annual event and that you would declare fallow for a year and that you'd have to renew your fallow. But from a practical standpoint, we've made the determination that this is sort of a one and done. You declare that you're going to be fallow, you pay the fee, it circulates, and basically everything should cease on our end, except, of course, the reserving the right to make an inspection of the premises if we felt that there was a need. But that's what we would generally recommend, a temporary pause. However, there are some circumstances when an operator might wish to withdraw their land use entitlement. And that's a little bit of a separate process right now. The reason we recommend really thinking it through is that it is an irrevocable decision, and that once withdrawn, if someone in future wanted to have a commercial cannabis operation, they would be starting from scratch, just like a new applicant. And preserving the ADP, I mean, you kind of have to examine the pros and cons. The obvious pro is that ADP may have some value, and that if you were to start up the site again in future, you're going to have a faster restart here at the county, and that it leverages all the previous work that's been done. And you might even envision, a new owner that might want to make some changes. They would still have their core entitlement, and then they could submit an amendment if they wanted to, say, reconfigure their site, shrink or expand their canopy, et cetera. But what we've found going through this with a number of cultivators is that sometimes maintaining the ADP can interfere with a transaction. So if somebody were to, say, want to refinance their property or sell their property, currently the banks are reluctant, as I think everyone knows, to put conventional financing on these kind of properties. And I think a lot of our cultivators have bumped up against real insurance problems with their fire insurance maybe not paying a claim if they have a commercial cannabis operation. So there may be very valid reasons to consider both shutting down the ACP and withdrawing the land use entitlement. If somebody wishes to do both, we really have a pretty straightforward process. We need just to have a letter executed to our planning department. After all, it's a planning department that grants that land use entitlement. And a sample is described here. The most important thing to convey is that if someone wanted to fallow their site temporarily, the operator can do that with the form, not a big deal. But if the land use itself, the entitlement is being withdrawn, we would also need to have the landowner sign off on that or be on board with that if that person is different than the leaseholder or operator. So since that entitlement ties to the land. Let's see, I just want to check, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Let's see. I think that's really all I had. If you have questions, specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So I have a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about change of ownership and how that may come into play with just as business plans adapt and shift?
Yeah, we've had a few changes of ownership, and it used to be when I first joined the group, we would require a formal amendment. And then we got away from that for a while, and our planning department said, just submit the new ownership materials. All we need is to know who the responsible parties are. Somebody needs to sign an authorization to pay, and we need a good address and email on file so we know who to come to when we're checking for compliance. For some reason recently, I think they've gone back to requiring the amendment. And I'm not sure why, but it would be an inexpensive amendment since we charge for time. Not every department in the county would need to review it, but the planning department, I believe, is asking for a minor amendment when ownerships change.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Right now, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A or the chat, but if anything pops up for you, I'll be sure to let you know, and we'll address it at that time. But if anyone does have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A so we can address them while we're on the webinar. Okay, so thank you so much, Sue. That was great. Really appreciate it. Next up is Dustin Patterson with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Welcome, Dustin.
Thanks for having me. Hey everyone, I'm Dustin Patterson. I'm a senior environmental scientist with the Office of Cannabis for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I got to start with by saying that an interesting thing about my department, we don't actually permit cannabis, but as part of the permitting process for cannabis that farmers go through, they have to notify us of any lake and stream bed alterations. So I have here, and forgive me, I'm going to see if I can get it up for everyone. Let's see. Can everyone see this? This is a document that we have, a just real quick one-page reference for how to close out your lake and stream bed alteration agreement document. Now, the vast majority of sites that specifically that I dealt with in Nevada County, for example, do not have an actual lake and stream bed alteration agreement. Most of the time in the notification process, when CDFW has come out, it's found that there's non-impact on a lake or stream, and farmers would get what's called a notification not required letter, which you see here. There's some other letters that are not as common, like this one, the no agreement needed letter. Everyone can see this, right? I'm not
Hey,
just
Dustin, real quick. Yeah, it's a we're seeing some blocks covering some of the page. But I don't know what's there's something on the left top and right. Yeah.
Was that everything?
I think that might do it. Let's see. If it's not working, Diana can share it because we have the document here as well.
Yeah, and we'll make that available to anyone that would like to have it, since this is just a quick reference to it. Operational law letters are covered here. These are also not as common. And the whole theme that I want to convey here is that for CDFW, all these cultivation sites are unique. And for every single instance, you're going to want to reach out to your local regional contact for CDFW. For Nevada County, that's going to be Region 2, and the office is located in Rancho Cordova. If you are already cultivating, you're going to have something from my department, and it's going to have contact information for the scientist that handled your notification or that is in charge of your permit. That's the person that you want to reach out to, and they can give you your unique step-by-step what you need to do in order to close down your operation. The main permit that we do issue, which I'm going to go down here, everyone can still see everything, right? I'm not blocking it.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay. Is the lake and stream bed alteration agreement itself. And so there's a few options for wrapping things up. If you're closing down a farm or you're shutting down for a while, you can go through here because every single lake and stream bed alteration agreement is going to be unique. And in a lot of instances, these are projects that cultivators already have that were going on that are beneficial to improve their property. And so it may not, even though you're closing down your cannabis operation, you may want to still see this through since you have paid the fees for this permit and you've likely done engineering already. But if you do not, there are options for how to come out of your LSA agreement. So that's all I have for closing down an operation. I'm happy to talk about if you're looking to transition it to a different owner as well.
That would be great, Dustin, if you could cover that. But we also have a one question.
Yeah.
All are outdoor or greenhouse sites needed? Do they need an LSA? Outdoor or greenhouse sites?
So every site is required to notify CDFW, and we go out on almost every site. We try to get boots on the ground out there to determine whether you're going to need a lake or stream bed alteration agreement. There are specific circumstances such as entirely indoor operations, which can go through what we call the self-certification process, and that's available on that sheet as well for what you would need to do.
Okay, great. Does that answer the question? Let us know if you have any other clarifying questions that need to be asked. And then Yeah, Dustin, if you could cover transferring
Yeah,
information, that'd be great.
transferring ownership is a little more interesting. So, like I said, a lot of Nevada County sites that I have been to, most of them get the notification not required letter because most people are not impacting a lake or stream bed or planning on doing any project or cultivating near those things. If you have a notification not required letter, technically, anytime you're changing anything about the project, there will need to be re-notification to CDFW. So if you're transferring the owner, you will need to re-notify in that case. Same with a no agreement needed, and same with an operation of law letter. The only thing that you can transfer is a lake and stream bed alteration agreement, and that depends on what type of permit you have, because there are a few different types of lake and stream bed alteration agreements, and you need to check with your representative to see what permit you have and whether it's eligible to be transferred or not. That's the long and short of it.
Awesome. That's great information. Cool. Thank you so much, Dustin. There any other questions for Dustin? Put them in the Q&A, please. And if you think of them later, that's fine. Just let us know what the question is referring to, and we'll make sure that question gets answered. All right. Thank you so much, Dustin. All right. Next up is Marissa Bosenko. She's with the Central Valley Water Board. Thank you so much for being here, Marissa.
Awesome. Thank you. I do have a colleague chatting right next to me, so if you hear background noise, I apologize. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Screen two. Okay, so you should, let me move this. So you should see my screen now.
Yeah, looks
So
great.
I am with the Water Quality Control Boards in the Region 5 area. And I am what's called an AGPA. I'm an analyst. And so I handle a lot of the changes we're talking about and the terminations. And so if there's any questions, you can always reach out to me first. And if it's too site specific or really needs, a scientific staff's input, then I can get you pointed in the right direction. Let's see. So just a brief presentation overview. I'm just going to go over who we are because we do get confused with other agencies quite frequently. We're going to go over how to update the site information, those common changes like ownership or, changing your cultivation area, things like that. And then we'll go over how to terminate your enrollment with us. And then I'll briefly plug the annual monitoring report, which will be coming due as of March 1st, 2026. And then I'll close with some invoice information because we do get a lot of questions about fees, and they are required to be paid before things like terminating or getting issued a new notice of applicability when there's a site change. So first I'll go over who the regional water boards are. So we are this area highlighted in orange, and we are not the same agency as like Division of Water Rights or drinking water. We don't manage diversions or wells. We really focus on regulating waste discharges and maintaining water quality. So if you have questions about those types of things, we can direct you to, water rights. So first, I'll just go over how to make changes to site information. This is really common. Oftentimes, dischargers or operators change, landowners change, sometimes just the contacts. And then sometimes there's, adding or removing APNs. So our procedure is to either download from our website, which I have linked at the end, the change of information request form, or you can email myself or anyone else and we can get you that form. It's really important to note that when you're making a change of, say, ownership or operator, the new parties have to sign certifying that they're agreeing to all of the regulations and responsibilities in the permit. And so we really need that form to be signed by both the party who is leaving and then the new party who is taking over. And then as for changes to the site characterization, things like changing your disturbed area, changing your cultivation area, or like I said, adding parcels or removing parcels, because this is a change to the site itself, we do require that same change of information request form. And we've tried to make it as streamlined as possible. If you do get confused, though, you can always call me or reach out via email. But we do require updated site maps and updated site management plans. And that doesn't mean you have to completely rehaul your entire site management plan. You just need to typically redo the map and then any information about like where the cultivation will be or where the storage will be in your actual plan itself. And then just resubmit that via email or the portal. So we have that corrected and up-to-date information of the site. So next, I'll just kind of briefly go over how to terminate a site from our enrollment. As you can see here, I've listed out the major documents that are required. So that is the termination request form, the site closure report, which includes photo documentation, and then the final annual monitoring report. And all of these can be done on the cannabis application portal, which is those blue links on the slideshow. And you can also go into the general order itself and like pull the termination request form or pull the instructions for the site closure report and email those to us if you'd prefer to do it that way. The benefit of doing it on the cannabis application portal are these first two steps, the termination request and the site closure report. Those are both in one survey, so you can knock them out at once. And it does have the option for you to upload photos all in that same survey. So you can get that done in one survey, and then it automatically notifies staff as well. The final annual monitoring report is for tiered sites only. So if the site is conditionally exempt, I believe it's under 1,000 square feet, or if it's an indoor site, then you don't need to do the final annual monitoring report. But most sites in Nevada are tiered, so it would be required. And I just wanted to note that it's really important that all of these documents are completed. Staff will not terminate a site unless there's very special circumstances without all of these documents. And so this gives us all of the information that we can do our due diligence and make sure there's no threats to water quality and make sure the site is properly cleaned up and revegetated. And so the site will continue being billed invoices annually until all of the information is received. It's really common that people do like one step, or maybe they do the termination survey so they get those first two steps out of the way. But they either forget to submit photos or they forget to respond to staff questions and they don't submit the final AMR. And so they think they're terminated and then they get billed, and then we kind of have to re-explain that we've been waiting and have sent emails, and it's just really unfortunate. So if you have a question of where you're at in the process, like I said, feel free to reach out. We keep really good records, and we have everything handy. Even if you want to see what you've already submitted, we can re-email you those documents. But just kind of keep track of where you're at because we can't terminate until we get all of those documents. So just some additional information on the site closure report. Like I've kind of mentioned, we do require photos, and we understand that some of these sites are rather large. We're not expecting photos of every single square inch of your site. It's really focusing on if there's structures. So if there are hoop houses, taking photos inside the hoop house, so we can, one, tell there's no cultivation, but also make sure there's no like bags, grow bags, or, bags of fertilizer, anything like that, any waste left in the hoop house. The other things to take photos of would be any cultivation areas that were maybe just outdoors. Again, just making sure there's no grow pots or any waste left on the site and that the area is revegetated. And if you've done any like best management practices,
Hey, Marissa. I think you are muted or your voice went out.
Hear you. We could hear you still.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then.
No, we can't hear anything.
Sorry, everyone, having some technical difficulties. Hold tight for us, everyone. Thank you for being here.
am I
There you
connected
are.
now?
There you are.
That's
Perfect.
so strange. Okay, I don't know what happened. When did I cut out? What was did you guys hear anything about what the photos were trying to
You
see?
you were talking about revegetation in the photos.
Okay. So those are the types of things we would really like to see is if, there's revegetation or you did work on a water crossing or anything like that. We're just basically trying to confirm that the site has been cleaned up and is back to kind of the pre-cultivation status. Um, if this is extremely rare, but if there was an instance where staff really felt like they wanted to see the site in person, we can request a site inspection. But like I said, that's really rare, and usually we request the photos so we can avoid that because it is typically inconvenient for all parties involved. And so that's why we really kind of request photos and we look at the aerial imageries and all of those tools. So I just wanted to show everyone a screenshot of what it looks like on the portal to complete or to navigate to the termination survey. So you'll just log in and then you'll navigate to this Create New Survey tab. And then it is this fourth one down that says Cannabis Order Termination Request Form. All of these questions are pre-generated, so you just need to fill them out. And like I said, this survey also combines the site closure report, so you will have completed two of those requirements in one survey. Next is the screenshot of the final annual monitoring report. A little tip for the final annual monitoring report, it's probably our slowest survey, so have some patience with it. But again, you'll go to Create New Survey, and then for this one, you will navigate down to where it says Online Cannabis Water Quality Monitoring and Reporting Program, which is what you do hopefully every year. But the difference is once this opens, it'll ask you if this is like an annual report. You will want to select the option that says this is the final monitoring report required to be submitted before terminating. And that's what makes it that final annual monitoring report. And it does queue up a few different questions about cleanup and winterization measures. A lot of sites ask us, well, what if something doesn't apply to us? We never ended up cultivating things like that. There are comment boxes under each question, and you can simply put not applicable, never cultivated, or whatever the case may be. for your specific site. So one of the last things I'll go over today is just kind of plugging the annual monitoring report. These are due in March of every year for the previous year. So we're in 2026. So the annual report is actually for the 2025 cultivation season. And it opens in January. It's usually like the first to second week of January it opens, and then it closes March 1st of that year, so 2026 for this year. We really wanted to just stress if you somehow missed that March deadline, or maybe you didn't know this was a requirement, you can fill them out late. Like it doesn't close entirely where you can't access the survey, and we'd much rather have late information than totally not having it at all. Because when we do go to make changes, if there's a request for, say, ownership changes, and we're going to issue a new notice of applicability naming the new owner, we have to have the annual monitoring reports completed. It's one of the flags. So it's much, much better to just get it in late. Obviously, best to get it in on time, but if you miss that March 1st deadline, just get it in as soon as you possibly can. The annual monitoring report, again, generates all the questions based on your tier and risk. And so you just need to plug in your WDID and locate your parcel, and then all of the questions will be generated for you. It's mostly things about what's called best management practices and winterization measures and things like that. And again, if something's not applicable, we have that comment box to explain that. And then lastly, I just wanted to go over invoice information. We do get a lot of questions about this. In order to terminate, we do require that all invoices be paid before termination. And in order to like make a change to your disturbed area or to your landowner, before we issue that notice of applicability with those updated changes, we also require invoices to have been, any outstanding invoice to have been paid. It's also important to note that the Central Valley Water Boards does not have a fallow option. So a site is either in compliance, paying invoices, submitting annual monitoring reports and that sort of thing, or they need to go through the termination process. We unfortunately do not have a fallow option or like a hold option. And then this is just how to make your payments. We do have a website you can make payments with a credit card, which has a 3% fee, or with your debit card, which there is no fee on that. And then we also accept payments via mail, check, or money order. And you can pay in person, but you'd need to set an appointment as well. So I didn't really plug that one. So those are kind of all of the things I had to discuss today. Let me check the Q&A section real quick. But if you have any site-specific questions, Maggie Driver, whose information is in this red square, she handles Nevada County for our agency. Like I said, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, for any administration questions. But if you have a very site-specific question, you can go ahead and reach out to Maggie as well. Let's see, any... So I see here that one of the questions is, what are you looking for in the photos? And then it says all cultivation infrastructure is gone. So if the greenhouse or the hoop house is permitted with an ag permit, we don't require the hoop house to be removed. It needs to have a justification typically, and there is a lot of site-specific discussion that goes into that, what it's going to be used for, how many hoop houses are there on the site. Typically, we do require that all infrastructure be removed, except for those exception cases. And so what we're looking for in those photos are documentation that the cultivation, whether it was a hoop house or a garden bed, has been, say, revegetated, that all the trash and debris is removed. You know, we don't want to see a bunch of grow bags or trash there. And so that's what we're looking for in the photos. Also, if staff have specific questions based on aerial imagery, they will circle those areas of concern on the aerial images and send an email back saying, hey, can we get some photos of this area? It looks like there's still some disturbed area there. And so those are the types of things that staff will go back and forth with with operators on. And then I see another question that says, what do you need for the AMR? Um, I'm not sure how to answer that. The only information you truly need for the AMR to complete it is the facility ID, which is also called a WDID. You'll need the parcel number or site address because there's a interactive map where you have to select the parcel you are doing the report for. And then from there, you're just going to want to have general site information. So that AMR handles really heavily winterization measures. So really making sure like no heavy equipment was operated on the site during the winter period. Making sure that there was no grading or disturbing of land during that period. Sometimes it involves things with roads, questions about roads, just making sure that all of everything that's needing to be um, done before the winter period was actually done. It asks things about like maintenance and monitoring. So if there's, say, culverts, are you actually doing the walk of the site to make sure those aren't plugged and making sure those are working properly? It's mostly questions about that. So you'd need that kind of information for your site. It does have some questions about um, disturbed area and cultivation area. It's really just a check, asking, are there any changes since last year to cultivation size? If there is, then you fill that out with your new cultivation area. Questions like that. So I have a couple questions here that says, can we keep hoop houses if there's no cultivation? And along that same line, can we keep raised beds to grow like vegetables? And those are really common questions we get. I would say they are site specific. Like I said, scientific staff would ask about that and what they're going to be used for in the future. And we would still require like photo documentation that they're cleaned up. Um, and the size would also be a factor. For instance, if it's, 4 hoop houses, is that really for personal use and those kind of back and forth that the staff would be inquiring about? I think I got all the questions in the Q&A chat. Um,
I have a question for you,
yeah.
Marissa, and it's one that we've actually got here at our office at the Cannabis Alliance. But some farmers may transition to traditional agriculture, maybe using the hoops or their beds or the grow bags. Is that's all just site specific? They would just need to speak with someone from the water board and explain what's happening, but it's not yeah, there's options there for people that are transitioning to regular agriculture, going to be using the infrastructure or using it for personal use.
Yeah, so that does get a little complicated. They would definitely need to talk to like Maggie Driver, who is our environmental scientist here at the water boards, who handles Nevada County. And she'd need to have discussions with our manager because it really, if it's going to be for like commercial ag use, it really does need to still be permitted with the water boards, but it can't be permitted under our cannabis program. And so then it falls into this unique situation where what permit do they need based on their size. A lot of our permits are for larger agriculture. And so it kind of falls into that category. We really tried, because it has come up before, where we try and talk to the operator or the landowner and really get an idea of what exactly the scope they're wanting to do. But typically, we do require like hoop houses and things like that to be removed, or unless they're already permitted by the county for ag.
Okay, so if they are already permitted by the county as ag exempt, that's how it is here in Nevada County. They have a permit for what's called ag exempt. That would be okay.
That is my current understanding of how we've handled our most recent cases like that, correct?
Okay.
And again, that would come down to really talking with Maggie Driver, and our manager's name is Kelly Hickox. Um, and so just making sure um, that there's no current cultivation and that it is cleaned up before transitioning it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, if there are no further questions for me, that definitely concludes my presentation. So I will stop screen sharing.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marissa. And yeah, that is it. We're wrapping up our webinar. Thank you everyone who joined and presented and gave such valuable resources to our viewers and people who will see this in the recording on our YouTube channel, which is going to be on our website at nccannabisalliance.org/getlegit. You'll see the webinar recording up next week. So thank you again, everyone. Really appreciate your participation and have a great rest of your night. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks everyone for your participation and time. Greatly appreciate it.